difficult to explain, frankly, very difficult to explain. And I think that they're difficult to explain to the students here in Denmark when I'm standing in the same room as they are, and I can see their faces, and I can see on their faces that they don't understand. But I think it's even more difficult to explain to you because, of course, I can't see your faces, and I don't know whether you understand. And I'm not sure that in this case, smileys are going to fix it. So what I think will help is if you start to ask some questions now about what I've said, because it's very important that you understand what I've said, and yet at the same time, it's a bit tricky to understand. So I would like questions now, either in the chat or verbally. But I have also written to Dr. Lone and to Mr. Sau, asking them to give you a little bit of help with this particular part of your writing, because I think that maybe it might be a bit easier to understand if somebody explains it to you in English and then explains it again in Vietnamese and then explains it again in English, because it's quite a lot to have in your head. But basically, in the theory section, I'm just going to write this in the chat as well. In your theory section, you wrote about two things. Is so that's what I would expect to see, because I don't think that you can write much more than this. Here, I don't know how many characters you're going to write. It's impossible to judge. But when we did our maths before, we said we'd written about 6,000, which means we have about 19,000 left. And this is going to be, I don't know, a lot of those 19,000. I mean, it could easily be 12 to 14. Yeah, it could easily be something like 12 to 14,000 characters. And then the remaining characters will be your conclusions, your reflections. Oh, hang on a minute. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with my fingers. I'm making all sorts of typing errors. So I think that that is basically where we are now. And of course, there's quite a bit of time before you have to hand in. And I think that I've done my best to explain some very complicated things. But we have a lesson on Tuesday, and we have a lesson on Thursday. So the Tuesday and Thursday lessons will basically be about your theory section, and it will be supervision. That is to say, Tuesday and Thursday. Oh, Thursday, can't spell. So that's the plan for Tuesday and Thursday. I will be answering your questions and you will be screen sharing your work for feedback. And I think particularly you'll be showing me your theory section, because I think this in particular is the difficult and most difficult part of what you have to do, simply because sort of understanding it is the tricky thing. I mean, you know, it's not impossible to understand, but it's also difficult to explain. So so I think that is where we are for now, in the sense that in the sense that, you know, to a certain extent you you might have questions now, but I understand that you don't. You really need to ask questions. So I'm going to answer two questions.
Can I ask a question?
Please, yes.
I just have a question in general about the paper, about how we use pronouns in our paper, or we using like we in the group part and we using I in the individual part, or we are referring to ourselves in like third person.
Yeah, I think I think when you write together, you can use we, and
Okay.
when you write your own personal problem formulation, you could write I. But
Okay.
so like 9 times out of 10, you will be using we because it's a group exercise. But then when you are writing your own problem formulation of maybe 800 characters, then you would write I because it's your personal thing. Does that help?
Yeah, that's answer my question.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, and
Okay.
also one more thing about the I'm not confused, but I'm like really vague about the middle part of the paper where we write about our method and our like literature search. Because I'm really don't have an idea what to write in there and
Okay.
how to
Then
write that.
I will pretend I'm writing now.
Yeah,
So I will speak what I think you should write.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be a great help.
Yeah. So here we go. In order to investigate our problem formulations, we started by doing a quick and dirty search on Google. When we did a quick and dirty search on Google, we got 4.5 million hits about sustainability. And then I would take a screenshot of my first page in my Google search, my quick and dirty Google search. And I would say this was not practical. However, we had also been told that we could use a Boolean search in order to narrow our findings in our literature search. Therefore, we joined the two words recycling and I would put and in block capitals, and reuse in order to narrow our search, and we got 2,000 hits. The purpose of a Boolean search using Boolean operators and, or, and not is to refine the research, to refine the search rather. And then if it were me, I would include the Venn diagrams which were in the PowerPoint, you know, and the ones that show like and, where there's an overlap, and not, where there is no overlap, so you just have two single circles and so on. So I'd include those. Then I would say, having found some useful articles in the journals, we then did a snowball search. The snowball search was done by checking the reference list at the end of an article, and we found 2 or 3 articles which we then went to, which led us to 2 or 3 more articles. I would put the names of the authors in my writing, and I would put all of the bibliographical details in my bibliography. So now I'm not writing anymore, now I'm just speaking. But so what I would do is I would describe the process and then tell the reader why I did it and what the advantages were, and maybe what the disadvantages were. Like, for example, the quick and dirty search. When you get 4 million hits, maybe they're all good, and maybe none of them are good. But there's just too much. You can't possibly read 4.5 million articles. So you kind of you explain why you would do that sort of search, and then you would explain what else you did, and you would basically describe the process of searching for literature. So does that help?
Yeah, that help a lot. I think I got a sense of what to write now.
Yeah, so I think the thing is to write I mean, you try to write in a formal voice, in a formal way, but basically you tell me what you did and what was good about it and what was bad about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I got it.
Good. Thank you very much, Kyle. That was a good question.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Does anybody else have questions? Is anybody brave enough to answer a question? Just put yourself out there. I will do my best to help you answer the question. But is anybody brave enough to answer one of my questions? No, nobody's brave enough. Oh, come on. Think about it. All right, well, here's the question. What is a top-down scientific attitude? Does anybody have an answer for that, either a verbal answer or a written answer? That is basically the answer. You start off with your theory, your scientific theory. This generates an idea because, as we've said, the theory explains and predicts. Then you go and find data, you analyze data, obviously, and then you come to some sort of conclusion. The thing is, that is the sort of question you need to ask in your work, in your group as well. And then you need to cut and paste what I've just written and then turn that into some sentences based on the PowerPoint and based on your understanding of the PowerPoint. So now we've got the, oh, yes, I think we have, just a second, I can't quite see it. Yeah, so there's the next question. Well, now we've had an answer to the first one, we should be able to get a second answer to bottom up. Okay, Carl, that was a good attempt. Actually, there's the answer. So the thing is, you've got the data correct, of course, and you got the analysis correct, and you got the conclusion correct. It's just that when you do bottom up, you don't have a hypothesis. Because you start with the data, you do an unmotivated analysis. And when it says unmotivated analysis, that's different from a hypothesis. So a hypothesis is kind of an idea that you have in advance. And unmotivated analysis is an idea you get from your pattern seeking in the data. So you can see that the main difference then between bottom up and top down. Top down, you have an idea in advance. The idea in advance comes from your theory. This is a good thing. And your theory explains and predicts. So you have a starting point, which is the prediction. The theory predicts something and you think, okay, now I have this idea, I think I'll see if I can try and prove it. Whereas bottom up is when you think to yourself, I have no real idea. I might have those suppositions we talked about, these kind of half ideas, but I have no really well-formed idea. But I'll go and get some data. I will find the patterns in my data. I will find the regularities, and that will give me my idea. And then I can analyze my idea and I can come to some conclusions. So the two things in terms of the analyst, top down, bottom up, they're kind of the same. But in terms of the sorts of discoveries, if you like, if the sorts of conclusions that you can come to, they are different. Because the method, and that's the key thing, the method of arriving at your conclusions is different. So the key word is method. It's the method that's different. If I start off with my ideas, I think to myself, okay, let's see, let's take a kind of a real example. I went to Vietnam for a week. Now, people told me that it would be humid. So I thought, okay, it's going to be humid. But I had no idea how humid it would be. So the humidity I found really difficult to live with. Right? I really, I was sweating all the time. I was really suffering. And the thing is that I could have found some data in advance, right? And I could have gone to a weather service and it might have said, oh, humidity Vietnam, 94% or something. But I still wouldn't have known what that meant in reality for me as a person on my physiology sort of thing. So I could have gone top down and I could have said to myself, I will find as much data as I can about humidity in Vietnam. And then I will try and come to some conclusions when I analyze this data on what sort of clothing I should wear. Should I have a wool sweater? Should I have a t-shirt? Should I have a Cool Max t-shirt? Right? So I could have done that, and I could have packed my suitcase based on the statistics. But as it was, I decided to go the other way. I went kind of bottom up. So I thought, well, all right, it's going to be humid, it's going to be hot. So I will take all of my lightweight clothing with me and an umbrella. Because if it's humid enough, it will rain. Sure enough, my ideas for the clothing that I took were as good as they could be, and having an umbrella was a very good idea. So the thing is that on the one hand, I could have done an analysis of the weather statistics and an analysis of the sorts of clothing I should take. On the other hand, I thought, well, okay, maybe it's just best to have a selection of clothes and look out of the window and see what the day looks like. So I think that is also a way of thinking of the difference between the two. I hope that helps some people. Does anybody else have any other questions? Because if you don't, I think I'm going to give you another 20 minutes to look at that questionnaire, because you need to start some writing. You need to start writing this stuff. And if you look at the questionnaire, all of the key words you need to include are there. So all you have to do is take the key words and then build sentences around them. If you think of it that way, it sounds very simple. It isn't, but it sounds that way. Okay, so are there any more questions? Okay, you go to the keywords to include. I will remain online, but I'm switching my microphone off so that if you need me, it's probably best to say something.